Hi Bloomies, Dumelo here. I'm coming from Bloemfontein Property Showcasing, and today we're touching on all things financing. We do know that the journey of getting property may be a tough one, but we've got experts like Sophia that are going to take us through that journey.
In the heart of South Africa, there's a city full of opportunities, charm, and untold property stories. Welcome to Bloemfontein Property Showcase.
This afternoon, I am with Sophia. She's coming from SA Home Loan. Of course, she'll be giving us and unpacking some of the requirements, the journeys, and of course, busting some myths when it comes to financing. Hi, Sophia.
Hi, Dumelo. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Before we even go even further, let's speak exactly what SA Home Loan does, what it offers, and the products that come with it.
Perfect. So, SA Home Loan solely focuses on home loans. Unlike the traditional banks,
Yep.
They offer home loans, but they also offer credit cards and personal loans. So that's where we are different from them. We truly just focus on home loans. So that's our speciality, that's our drive.
So now, Sophia, let's speak about the role that a bond originator does. What exactly do you do, step by step?
So the bond originator is the middleman.
Okay.
So they work on behalf of the client. So that means it's much lesser stress for the client. So they would gather all the documents that is required, number one, to first do the pre-qualification.
Okay.
That's the most important thing to do, because then the client knows exactly how much they qualify for to buy a property. So once they've made the offer on the property, the bond originator will then submit the documents to the various lenders, and they will also negotiate a better rate amongst the different banks that is there. So they don't charge a fee, it's free because they are getting paid by the lenders at the end of the day. So it just makes the process much easier for the buyers, because you must remember it's a big step in buying a property. There's a lot of things that you don't know, or a lot of things that you maybe think you know, but at the end of the day, it just makes the process a little bit easier if they go to a bond originator to do it on behalf of them. And as I said, the most important thing is that person can negotiate the best deal at the end of the day that will suit the client's pocket then.
And then, you've mentioned pre-qualification. So I wanted to speak specifically for people that are looking into entering the property market, or rather the first-time home buyer.
Yes.
What exactly is a pre-qualification?
So the pre-qualification is when we look at the client's credit report, because that's the most important thing. We also ask them for pay slips and bank statements, because we will also have to determine how much the client qualifies at the end of the day. The other thing that's important, we look at the current debt that they have, because you know what, everybody out there, they go house hunting and then they look at, let's say, 1 million or 1.5 million property, and when we come back to the basics, doing the affordability assessment, that is where we see this is actually how much the client qualifies for. So it's really important for the first step to take that and to do the pre-qualification. There's other options of FLISP as well. So FLISP is the support from the government. So that's for the lower income clients, whereby they can get an amount based on their income from FLISP, so that they can reduce the monthly installment, because you can use FLISP as a deposit, or you can use FLISP to pay the transfer and registration fees. So again, I know I'm repeating myself, but really, to do a pre-qualification is worth your while. And the other thing is, you're not wasting the time of the agent, and you're not wasting your own time to look at the wrong price range. So your first step would definitely be to do the pre-qualification.
And while we are still on the topic of a pre-qualification, let's speak documents. You spoke payslips, you spoke bank statements.
Yes.
Are there any other documents that would be required?
Good. So people that's working normal private sector or government, we would require IDs, we would require marriage certificate, 3 months pay slips and 3 months bank statements. So that's your standard documents. It becomes a little bit more difficult when we go to the self-employed part, because the self-employed part, we would require the latest 2 years financial statements, and then also a letter from the accountant that's doing the books to confirm this is the amount that the client draws from the business, and then also 6 months business bank statements and 6 months personal bank statements, because we have to go back on the history to see, okay, the client is definitely transferring money from the business bank statements to the personal account. So that's in short what we will require to do the pre-qualifications.
And still on the topic of now business, you're mentioning business and the various documents needed. Would that also apply to perhaps the informal people working in the informal sector, or how would it then go?
You know what? For the informal sector, I would say we would only require the pay slips and the bank statements. You know, we are a little bit different from the banks, if I can say it like this. So sometimes I see at the banks, they would request a client that's self-employed pay slips. But a client cannot give us pay slips if he's self-employed, because we go back to the financial statements and we analyze them and see what is the profit that's being made, what is the income that's being drawn from the business, is the assets and the liabilities in range. So there's a lot of factors when we look at the self-employed clients. It's a bit trickier than the normal client, because you know what, I had the conversation this morning with another client whereby our head office requested the ID34. The ID34, especially when it's self-employed clients, that is the document that you get from SARS, where they confirm for you this is what the client has provided through to SARS as the monthly drawings, and then he's taxed on that. So this morning's conversation as well, I don't know what it is. So people are really misinformed, especially when it's self-employed clients, that it is really important to use an accountant that know what they are doing. Because when you come to this point, when you want to buy a property and those documents aren't in order, it's a problem. Because the documents that you supply me is for 2 years. So that means we will have to wait at least another year for you to fix your stuff. So it's really important that especially clients in the self-employed industry, that they make sure that their financial statements are in order.
And Sophia, before we move into the process of bond application and the likes, let's firstly touch on credit. How important, I know it's a sensitive topic for a lot of people, but credit, what is credit? How do you build a credit profile, and how important is it when you want to undertake such a process?
Credit profile is the most important thing. It stands out on top. Because number one, if you have a poor payment profile, that means you have a poor credit record. So you will also find out there that people would sometimes, you have to pay on the first your installment, but then you stretch it until the 5th and then you make the payment. Remember, on your credit profile, it shows then that you are a late payer. So it will reflect there, although you've paid them on the 5th, you haven't paid them on the 1st, as per the confirmation that you have with the different shops out there. Okay, so that's very important. Please don't make unnecessary debt. Unnecessary debt also decreases your score at the end of the day. The other thing is, you get a lot of times where the people apply for the month-to-month loans. Please leave them. Please don't take them. Please stop if you are taking it. Because you know what the problem is. If the client's credit score is in line for an application, the problem comes in whereby credit looks at the application to say, but this client is taking month-to-month loans. So what is that? A red indicator to say that this client is using that money every month to survive through the month. I know it's hard out there. I do understand it. We do see it daily. But that is one of the most common things that's now happening with a lot of clients, because it's a quick loan here and a quick loan there. Next month I will pay the full amount. But you are depending on that loan to survive through the month. So it's really very, very important. Something that I've learned during the years with SA Home Loans, especially with credit record. Don't open 20 retail accounts. It's not going to build your credit record. Something that I've learned that's really doing the trick these days would be a credit card.
Okay.
And also not a humongous credit card. So let's say, for example, your balance is 2,000 Rand on the credit card, né? And you have used 1,000 Rand. So when you get your salary at the end of the month and you know your installment is 1,000 Rand, né? But you can afford to pay 1.5, pay it. Because that builds your credit record. They can look at the credit history on the profile as well to see, is it a good payer? Is it a late payer? Do they just make payments every second or third month? But when you do it like that, step by step, your credit profile will grow. The most important thing is, there's a lot of people that also say, you know what, I don't believe in debt. If you don't have debt, you will not be able to make debt. Nee? So the best thing is a credit card with a small balance that you have to repay. You build yourself a score, no unnecessary loans. That's the most important thing that clients must look at as well.
So let's now jump into the process of a bond.
Okay.
How do you start with the application for a bond, and how long does that process take?
Perfect. Okay. So the process starts, number one, with the pre-qualification. Once that is done and the client have made an offer on the property, we would then formally submit the application through to our credit department. So that's where everything starts. They will then check the client's credit history. They will do the affordability assessment on the application, and then they would come back with an offer to say, based on affordability or based on the client's credit score, yes, we can offer the client 100% loan. Excuse me. So once that is done, we will go back to the client and say, this is what SA Home Loans can offer you. Next step will then be the valuation, because remember, we have only received the offer to purchase, so we physically send out an evaluator to evaluate that property to make sure that that property is worth the purchase price. Yes, definitely. And the other thing is, that is our security. So we must make sure that the property is also in a good condition and that it's safe for the purchasers as well. Because you know, the day that you go out and you view the property, it's like, yes, I'm seeing this and I can see this table here, and then you don't think of looking at all of the things there. So that's why we send out a valuator. So let's say the valuation comes back for the full purchase price. Then we are sorted, then we don't have any issues. Sometimes the valuators would pick up to say there was extensions done on the property, so we would require approved plans. So you see, that's how we keep the client safe and the property as it is our security.
Yes.
Okay. So once all of that has been sorted out, all of the conditions have been met from the valuer's side and that was requested, then the process for bond registration starts.
Okay.
So there is usually 2 attorneys that is involved in that process. So it would be your transferring attorney that will transfer the property from the current owners over to the new owners. And then you also have the bond registration attorney. They will register the property for you in the deeds office. Look, there is different kinds of transactions out there. So you get the late estate matters. They take a little bit longer because we have to wait for the master's approval, all of that as well. But your normal transactions, I'm always telling the clients, you know what? I rather say 6 to 8 weeks for registration to be finalized instead of saying, you know what, within the next 6 weeks the property would be registered, because I don't want them come knocking at my door with their furniture saying, where must we go now? So the attorneys will keep the client informed in the process where they are. I know one of our attorneys also, what they do is, and that's quite a good thing. They will confirm with the client once everything is up for lodgement in the deeds office. So that means just before just before the application must register on the client's name, they would say, we are now here at the final stage for registration. So please contact your agent and make sure that you can move into that property, because within the next 7 to 10 days, the property would be registered on your name, because otherwise, where are you going to go? So that is very, very important also, to make sure that before the bond registers, if all the parties are aware if there's current tenants in the property, that they have moved out, or when will they be moving out, so that you can occupy the property. So in short, I would say for bond approval, I usually work on 3 to 5 working days if everything goes well. And then for the bond registration process, we work on a 6 to 8 weeks time frame for it to register then on the new buyer's name.
And Sophia, you also spoke about evaluation of property and the amount. So now, in a case, perhaps a client now purchase a certain property, does it ever happen that an evaluator comes back and says, this is not the value of this property? How would that happen? How would that work?
Yes, definitely. I've had a few cases like that. Look, when the evaluator goes out to do the evaluation, there's 2 things that they get from SA Home Loans. The contact person, who they must contact for the evaluation, and the property description. So they cannot be influenced by anybody to say, look, I'm selling this property for this much. Mm-hmm. This is the value that we need on this property. So yes, we've had a few of those, where the evaluator would come back and they would say, for the area, because the area is also one of the things that they look at. What's the sales been in the last 12 months? So the area can also be a problem whereby we can get a lower value. And then you also get some of these clients that when they do renovations, they don't consider again the area. So the property is then over-capitalized for that specific area. So we've had a few of those. So in that case, there's 2 things that we can do. Either the buyer can say, okay, I will accept the lower purchase price and I would then pay a deposit.
Okay.
But nobody wants to pay what the property isn't worth. So that's very important. So that's why I say that we always send out an evaluator. We do not do test stops. To each and every property we send out the evaluator. In that case, the client, if they really want that property, they can definitely pay a deposit. Or I go back to the agent and to the client and say, look, this is a professional registered valuator that's done the valuation on this property, and this is the value that was found. So maybe you can discuss it with your seller. 99% of the time, the agent would come back and say, you know what, I've sat down with the sellers and they are happy to adjust the purchase price. So there is ways and means that we can still assist the client if that is the case.
Because I asked this, some of the people that now want to, especially those that are selling their first property, they would get there and then decide, look at other factors, we've upgraded this, fixed the tile, extended the house, and this is how much we want. And then they appoint an agent facilitates, the property valuation, and they feel like, this agent probably just doesn't want me to make that amount of money or anything of that sort. So hence I needed the clarity that there are other restrictions outside of an agent or outside of how much you would want in your pocket that are to be considered. So now, Sophie, I'm going to get into something a little bit tricky. Interest, right? The interest that now SA Home Loan in this regard offers. A lot of people believe that I will always get a little bit less or a little bit more, or maybe Sophia doesn't want to give me a little bit less, Let's now take the viewer through interest. Who puts the interest? How does it happen that perhaps one gets prime minus or prime plus? What factors influence that?
Tumelu, that question has one answer. Your credit record.
Okay.
Because you know what? If you have a good credit score, a good credit record, that means there's no risk for the bank.
Yeah.
So that means you pay your accounts on time. There's a stable employment that you have. The debt ratio to the income that you are getting. um, that is when you get the good interest rates. Unfortunately, in today's life, you know what I said to another client the other day? Life happens.
Yeah.
Nobody can predict what is going to happen tomorrow. So yes, there are some areas where clients just, I couldn't make payment this month, or I could only make half the payment this month. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, your credit record determines the interest rate. So the higher the interest, the higher the score, the better the interest rate. Then you get the prime minus. The lower the interest, the lower the score, the client's interest rate are then really very high because of the risk. That's why.
Yeah.
That is why. So please, I urge everybody out there, look at your credit score. Make sure you pay your accounts on time. No necessary loans. It's really very important. For the 12-year or 20-year commitment that you are going to take when you are going to buy a property, sort your documents now. Sort out your financials now, because a 10.5% interest rate to a 12% interest rate over the 20-year term makes a big difference. Yes.
So be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Videos drop every Tuesday and Thursday. Make sure that you follow our social media platforms. That is Bloemfontein Property Showcasing. See you there.